Welcome to Apprentice. This is our first live webinar on LinkedIn, and I've had a great day. I hope you've all had a great day as well. Today, we're going to be discussing about how you can essentially just ask better questions and listen deeply. I was a degree apprentice, and I noticed the gap. There was a lot of support, for getting into an apprenticeship. But it seems like once you're in an apprenticeship, once you're already in, you are largely on your own and you're expected to navigate professional environments, build relationships with people senior to you, ask the right questions at the right moment without anyone actually teaching you how. And I think most of you in this room know exactly what I mean. What we've been building at Apprentice and what today is part of is the support that should have always been there from day one. I'll be sharing a live news segment where we'll be looking at what is trending right now in the apprenticeship space in the UK and also what's trending right now in the US space as well. We've been able to collaborate with a United States organization to sort of extend our partnerships and see what other markets are trying to specialize in delivering successful apprenticeship programs. And I'm glad for that sort of collaboration to occur with Apprentice. So with that being said, let's just get started. Hello and welcome to the Apprentice Daily. I'm Ioluwa and this is your global apprenticeship intelligence briefing for April 2026. Whether you're a student, a parent, an employer or a policymaker, the way people are entering the workforce is changing fast. And right now, on both sides of the Atlantic, apprenticeships are at the center of that conversation. Let's get straight into it. Starting in the United States is the Trump administration's hard push towards 1 million active apprentices, backed by $145 million in pay-for-performance funding from the Department of Labor, alongside $98 million for pre-apprenticeship pipelines in construction, manufacturing, IT, and healthcare. The new model is outcomes tied, where sponsors get paid when apprentices actually complete, which is a major policy evolution. National Apprenticeship Week is around the corner, 2026, which runs from April 26 to May 2nd, themed America at Work, making America skilled again, with daily themes covering AI, nuclear energy, shipbuilding, and advanced manufacturing. The big challenge stateside, however, is access and awareness. Compared to the UK and Europe, the US registered apprenticeship system is still a fraction of the size. But the policy signals in early 2026 are the strongest we've seen in years. Now over to the United Kingdom, and this is where things really get dramatic. England recorded 353,500 apprenticeship starts in 2024-2025, with 761,500 people actively on programs right now. That's a system at scale, but under the surface, there's a major structural shake-up underway. Now level 7 apprenticeships, which is equivalent to the master's degree, surged by 40.7% to 33,560 starts in 2024-2025. Why is that? Simply because employers and workers rushed to beat the January 2026 funding deadline. From January 2026, the government pulled public funding for level 7 apprenticeships for anyone aged 22 and over, except care leavers and those with education, health, and care plans. That one policy change triggered a stampede. Honestly speaking, universities scrambled, employers fast-tracked applications, and the statistics jumped off the page. Slow delivery, and it doesn't stop there. March 2026 brought news that 16 apprenticeship standards are being defunded from September 2026. Which includes the Chartered Manager Degree Apprenticeship at Level 6. Business schools are rethinking their entire apprenticeship portfolios. A survey by the Chartered Association of Business Schools found 38% plan to discontinue Level 7 programs. But here's the flip side, and this is important. The government is simultaneously investing £2.5 billion in a youth-focused package, where there's a £2,000 incentives for SMEs hiring 16 to 24-year-old apprentices. Foundation apprenticeships launched in August 2025 for 16 to 21-year-olds, and new apprenticeship units are being created in AI, electric vehicles, and solar energy starting April 2026. Wow. The policy direction is quite clear. Redirect money from senior workforce training towards young people entering the labour market for the first time. Engineering apprenticeships are up by 5%, but that growth is being driven almost entirely by the over 25s. Starts amongst under 19s have actually fallen. For anyone in manufacturing and engineering, that youth pipeline concern is the number one issue to watch. On diversity, there's real progress. BAME learners now make up 19.2% of starts, up from 12.8%. This is a meaningful shift in who apprenticeships are for. So what do the USA and the UK have in common right now? First, technology and AI are reshaping apprenticeship design. Both countries are actively building apprenticeship frameworks for data analysis, cybersecurity, software development, and AI roles. This isn't a side conversation, this is the main event. Second of all, the debate over who apprenticeships are for is heating up. In the UK, it's swinging back towards young people, and in the US, the push is to broaden access across demographics and age group. Third of all, performance and accountability are becoming the funding currency. Pay for performance in the US, achievement rates targets in the UK. Both government want evidence that the investment is providing and producing skilled workers, not just enrolled ones. It makes quite sense. And fourth, the student debt crisis is driving demand. On both sides of the Atlantic, the question is, do I need to go to university to attain a degree? It's being asked louder than ever. Apprenticeships, especially degree apprenticeships, are the answer to an increasing number of young people who are choosing what's next after higher education. Once again, this is your Global Apprenticeship Intelligence Briefing for April 2026. It is a moment of real change, funding reforms, new sectors, shifting demographics, and growing political attention on both sides of the Atlantic. I'm Ioliwa. I'll see you next time.
You let me know.
Oh my days, this is the first live stream, I'll be so honest. This is raw. This is organic. So as I was saying, our mission at Apprentice is really to build the infrastructure that prepares young people to successfully access and secure apprenticeships. Combining oh my days. Imagine I was just talking like this. Everyone's just thinking, what is he doing?
He was
But
in it. He was in it, man.
yeah, combining guidance, structured support systems, and data-driven support to essentially support and help every stage of the apprenticeship journey. And at Apprentice, we see a world where every young person has equal access to apprenticeship opportunities, where the path from education to meaningful employment is very clear, and where apprenticeships are recognized as a first choice career pathway alongside traditional university routes. But yeah, Cara, thank you so much for assisting me in that part. Take over. This is your show, so yeah, do your thing.
Of course, of course. So, welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you all so much from the United States to the United Kingdom. My name is Cara Gooch, and I stand in the great country of Texas. And by being a Texas resident, I've learned that one, barbecue is everywhere. Two, that connection is quite literally the greatest currency that we can lead from. And I think Southern hospitality is probably the best way that we can connect with those that are across the pond, those that are here locally in the States. And so I want to share some of that Southern hospitality with you today. And before we get started, I want to give a little background around how I got introduced to the two amazing, amazing founders of this incredible organization, Apprentis. So it was, I want to say almost a year ago now. almost a year ago now, I was invited to be a speaker at the University of Oxford. And a conference was hosted there. It's called ICAD. And so, shout out to all of the wonderful folks at NCAD. Um, but they put us in the same room, and that was probably the greatest accident that they didn't know that was going to be the most fruitful connection that they did not know that they were going to be spurring forward, right? So, with that said, I had the opportunity to share my own experience as an apprentice. I started my journey as a technology apprentice at a great company that you all know of, Accenture. Again, one that is based in the States as well as on the other side of the pond. So we're very excited about that. But my journey started after being told I wasn't enough. After being told that the only way that I can get into a corporate space was being an intern. And we know that internships in the United States are a bit more prevalent than apprenticeships. And we're seeing that in real time shift, right? The sexiness of apprenticeship is hitting the States in a remarkable way. And it's even being met with a lot of funding dollars from this administration. So we're very excited about that for those of us that have apprenticeship backgrounds and for those of us that are eager to get into apprenticeships. So after I started my apprenticeship, I come to find out that there are a lot of apprentices that simply don't know what direction they needed to take either during their apprenticeship or even after their apprenticeship. And so I served as a mental health advocate. Being a mental health advocate, I had the opportunity to ingrain myself and learn a lot about the apprentices that we were serving. And it started off as a 1 hour conversation with no expectation of having attendees, but 200 plus, hear me, 200 plus apprentices joined this listening session and said, I want to be better this way. I need better support this way. And so that led to me asking the right questions. I asked leaders that could make changes for me or make changes with me. I also asked the leaders that were guiding the apprenticeship program at this amazing organization. However, it was only until I asked the right questions and I asked the questions to the right listeners in order for me to be able to have a role created for me on the national apprenticeship team. And that then leads me to where we are now. We now see the other side of what it means to not only be an apprentice and be eager in your journey, but also be an apprentice that understands how to show up for yourself, right? How to connect, how to inquire, and how to lead. And that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to learn how to connect, how to inquire, and how to lead. But let's jump in with a couple of anchoring questions here. When we get started, when we see that we're faced with a new understanding of the information that is in front of us, some of the questions that we may ask ourselves: how might I see this with fresh eyes? What might I be assuming? Because even when you're sitting here with me virtually or in the same state as me, you may notice that you may come to this meeting assuming that you know how to ask questions, right? You may come to this saying, am I rushing to judgment? Does she really know how to lead me in what I need? Because I'm an apprentice, I'm a degreed apprentice, right? The way that the United States goes through apprenticeship is different from the way that we go through apprenticeship. So how can she help me? And last, what am I missing? Is there something that I'm missing before I place judgment, before I come in with an assumption, before I even say, I can't learn something from you? And last, what matters most? What matters most for the situation that you're facing? What matters most for the rooms that you are soon to enter? I'm going to start off with this quick quote from an amazing baseball player here in the States that he went on to glory many years ago. But he said, never let the fear of striking out keep you from playing the game. And what can striking out look like? It can sometimes look like a loss of trust. It can sometimes look like a loss of confidence. And other times it can look like a loss of opportunity. But you let me know in the chat, what does a loss or striking out sometimes when you're asking questions, when you're entering into a room for the first time, what can that feel like? And we have a couple of apprentices in the chat that are live with us today. So I would love to hear from you all in the chat. What can striking out look like or feel like for you? It can feel like a loss of respect. It can feel like a loss of respect because you think that the people around you just don't understand you. Or some may make you feel that what you're adding to the conversation, it just isn't enough, right? It can feel like micromanaging. What can striking out feel like? Suggesting an idea and it getting dismissed. Absolutely. Absolutely. The worst part of braving yourself and making yourself ready to be confident, because where are my introverts in the room? I'm not one of them, so I'm going to keep my head down for myself, but where are my introverts in the room? You spent a lot of time to prep yourself to be ready to go into this room, right? You spent a lot of time and you said, okay, my social battery, I'm going to reserve it for this day, right? Because I have to be confident, because I have to ask this question, because I always tend to feel like I have to contribute to the room, right? But what if I were to tell you something different? In order for you to understand that the space that you hold is not one that is required of you to fill the empty space, required for you to ask more questions, required for you to say, I have to add something. I have to add something. I have to add something. But if that something is less quality, the quality of that something that you add is less than what can help you go to the next level in your career, did you really add something? And so I want to address this, and then I want to kind of like cast this out of your mind and restructure the way that you're thinking about striking out. What if, when you say that there is a loss of trust, what if it's an opportunity to seek connection? What if loss of confidence is maybe a way to seek inquiry? And what if a loss of opportunity, or so you think a loss of opportunity, is actually a space in which you seek to lead and be a leader? Because we know that strong apprentices ask better questions. So let's review. Let's look at our personal posture here and why we're asking better questions and why it even matters. It's because employers notice when the questions are presented in a great way. So let's transition to the next section here. So what makes a good question? In the shoes of the listener, the person that is on the other side of this conversation that you're a part of, if you were to break down the way in which you look at a good question and the structure of a good question, it requires structure, it requires effort, and it requires direction. So with structure, it can be seen as either an open-ended or close-ended question. And when you structure your questions to be open-ended, that is an invitation for someone to inquire more about you, inquire more about your needs, inquire more about what you have to offer. Close-ended question is kind of like these doors that we're seeing on the screen, right? Where that space to be invited in to understand what you need, or that space to be invited into asking those clarifying questions, are closed. Yes, there may be situations where a yes or no question is required, but in most cases, let's look from a different lens here. If we were to present it from a space of it being more open ended than closed, what could that usher us into more of? It can usher us into this effort of putting in and crafting better questions. And as we craft better questions, we have to assess, is this an easy question? Is this a, hey, what do you want me to do? Or is this a, hey, I noticed that one of the requirements for this project calls for a developer. I once had some experience with that programming language. I would be more interested to bring it into this new team. What do you think about that? And so you see how I answered and I created that space. Even at the end of that question, it was a bit longer, right? It was a way in which we can introduce that new level of thought, but also end it off in, what do you think about that? Again, from the ears of the listener, how are they invited into the conversation to give you something back? So a quick framework here that we want to talk through is, and what else? In preparation for today's session, I had the great privilege and opportunity to create and also acquire a lot of resources. And one of the resources that I highly, highly recommend for anyone that is listening on today's call, it is called The Book of Beautiful Questions by Warren Berger. He is quite literally a amazing, amazing analyzer of how to form questions, the techniques behind questions, and he calls himself a questionist. And so when we think about this framework, and what else? What else are you asking for in this space? What else do you need? Or going back to that former example that I gave, what do you think? And what else? So that's the first framework that I want to give you today. And in your care packages, you will have the opportunity to not only look back through this recording, but also follow along with this framework as well. So for those of you that are taking notes, for those of you that have notes that you want to take and add them to the chat, feel free to add those, and feel free again to add your questions while we go through today's masterclass as well. And the second framework that I want to offer you is one that was my favorite when I was a part of Accenture, was how might we? How might we find a new way of thinking? How might we find a different avenue on how to look at this problem? How might we find a new way to invite somebody else into this current problem so that we can transition to the next thing? And the last way in which we want to structure questions and make good questions is assessing the way in which we add direction to the questions that we create. Is it broad or is it specific? Is it one that will lead to a roundabout answer? Because how many of us, and you added to the chat, how many of us have gone around, they've either gone into a meeting or they've even had a conversation that was like a weekend conversation, a conversation with your mom, a conversation with your best friend. And you said, you presented a question and then they didn't give you the exact answer that you were looking for. Is that not the most frustrating thing ever? You came in and you wanted a specific answer, but they gave you a roundabout answer. And it's like, just tell me yay or nay. Like, are you down to go or not? And so when you think about what makes a good question, you also have to think about the direction of the response that you're seeking, and also the direction that you are going to lead those that are responding to your question, what direction you want to take them in while you present your question. But we'll talk a little bit more about that later. But first, I'm going to pause and I'm going to pass it to how we are going to learn from someone that once faced rejection. They took a different direction in the way in which they were leading and they were going through their career. But how did you, Prena, take rejection and reframe it to be something different?
Okay, so Cara, I want to say, I think it's like, I really love the quote that you gave in the beginning of never let the fear of striking out keep you from playing the game, because that's exactly how I felt. So basically, the biggest thing I learned from rejection is that it's not a stop sign, it's information. Every no showed me exactly what I needed to improve. And I really think that my turning point was my final rejection. Throughout my last application season, it hurt. And I think you all can relate to that, of getting that rejection of a company that you really wanted to, and it's like, why didn't I get in? But I had to step back and ask those important questions. What can I change? What can I control? Yes, you've gotten the rejection, but that doesn't mean you end it there. It's about how you redirect yourself. So instead of taking it personally, I treated it like feedback. So I created a tracker which helped me improve, how to keep in track with my applications, what stages I've gotten to. And I think a lot of you have probably started doing something like that, which really helps. But it helped me analyze where I was getting stuck. And within that, I reached out to people who've gotten to similar places like me and asked them for their feedback. I emailed managers, I've emailed current apprentices, employers, just to get any bit of help that I could. And I think that also really helped me push me out of my comfort zone, because I 100% was an introvert in the beginning, and I think really pushing yourself out of your comfort zone, it really forces you to think about who you are and you want to know where you're going. But I think it's just about being honest with yourself, so knowing where you are and how to work on yourself, and just adjusting your strategy. So I think if there's one thing I want you to learn from my experience, is that rejection doesn't mean you're not capable. It's about redirecting yourself, as Cara was saying. And it's just a bit of refining and just creating a new tool that can help yourself. Never stop. If anything, just keep pushing. When you feel like you're in your last bit of motivation, just keep pushing, because you will get there. Right, so, sorry, I think my mute was on. Basically, I want to now talk about my story. So, my apprenticeship journey wasn't as straightforward as I think you would think it would be. So, I came from a country called Malawi, and that meant that I had to take a gap year when I moved here for my A-levels, because in order for you to be part of, to get a student loan from the government, you need to live in this country for 3 consecutive years, which meant I was originally going to take a gap year, but towards my end of year 13, I was like, I don't think uni is for me. I'm a very hands-on kind of person, and I think I was quite burnt out from A-levels, because for a lot of your life, you're just studying, and you just think, when is this going to end? So when I learnt about apprenticeships, I knew that this is for me. But my school wasn't really there for me in that kind of sense, so I had to go out by myself and teach myself about apprenticeships. But because of the lack of support, I didn't know anything about deadlines, about the different stages. I'll just go in completely unprepared. But then that taught me that I need to change what I was actually doing. So I resat my maths A-levels because I wasn't as happy with it as I wanted it to be. But during that first year, I focused on that, which meant that the second year came, I knew I was ready and prepared for what was about to come. So I sat down, created that tracker, after all the rejections, saw what I was failing in, how could I improve my speech, how could I be more confident, what questions to ask, And I think that really helped me throughout my second application season, which led to quite a few offers. I think that's what you need to do. You need to sit down with yourself and think about, where am I? and what can I do next? Can you go and ask more people for help? Is there certain questions I need to ask? Is there more information I need to get about the companies? You need to just really pick on the little bits, as frustrating as it is, but I think that's what's really important. And I think about joining Apprentice, not having that support, like I said in the beginning, it's really frustrating. You feel really stuck. You don't know who to go for, because I was the first one in my family to start doing an apprenticeship. Everyone went to university, and I think having this kind of platform really helps, because instead of struggling from the get-go, you'd rather get from point A to B without that struggle. And I think having this apprentice platform really helps, because you're with like-minded people who have all gone through similar journeys, and there's probably some aspect of everyone's story that you can really relate to. I think that's what really inspired me to join such a platform.
What encouragement. Thank you so much for sharing your story, Prina. Coming from another country, being able to be in the country for 3 years, and that dedication, right? That dedication beyond the fact that there was consistent, in a way, consistent rejection. Well done. Thank you so much for sharing your story. Really appreciate you. And it leads me to my next point, which is not taking offense and not sounding defensive when we are presenting some of our questions, right? Prina didn't take it this way when she faced seasons of what felt like rejections. She didn't want to focus on being right. She didn't want to focus on defending the fact that she had to be in the room. And so we have to ask ourselves this next question. Would you rather be right, or would you rather understand? As she listed in her tracker of some of the reasons behind the rejections and some of the requirements that she needed to uphold while she was going through her process, she understood what needed to be done differently. And so it leads us to this next space of, what are we going to do in order to rise above a defense? And in order to do that, we can follow a quote that we have from an amazing author and professional woman here in the States, Julia Jaliff. And she says, we need to learn how to feel intrigued instead of defensive when we encounter some information that contradicts our beliefs. Wow. Isn't that something that kind of brings us to our knees, right? It brings us to the space of honesty, because as we've said a couple of times now, that when we ask questions and when we're presenting to another person, we have to find this space of inviting them into the space with us. Though you may be in a space of unknowing information, unknowing how you feel, unknowing of what you're going to do next, there still is space to invite others in. So how do we do that? We don't present questions like, why did you change my work? Even from the tone, just the way that I presented that. Why did you change my work? Why didn't I get selected? Prina could have asked this. She could have asked this a couple of times. She could have said, in response to these rejections, why did you not pick me? I thought that I was the best. I thought that I was the best selected. I thought that I was the best suited for this role. And she may have been. But in redirecting, she found that she was not operating from a space of offense. Why is this wrong? Presenting from a space of continued why questions automatically in the ears of the listener can present you from a space of defense. And then they turn their ears off. And so how do we want to shift this to purpose? We want to use asset-based questions or phrases. Stick to the how. So how might I do better next time? I would love to work for this company. and I am not ashamed of applying another time. How might I position myself differently in this CV? How might I present myself differently on my resume? How might I present myself differently even online? Because we know that recruiters and hiring managers go straight to our online presence. In which way could I have presented my skills differently? When I fulfill this certificate requirement, how might I use it for this role? These are questions that you begin to think through and ask yourself. Next question framework that I want to present to you. When we present a question to someone and it may be presented in a way that is different from your original intent. So let's say that you're a part of a team and you have the opportunity to present some new thinking or new work to the project. At the time of delivery, you understand and notice that your piece of work that was vital to you, that kept you up at night, that it was changed. And so present from this way, opposed to presenting from a space of offense. Observe. Observe what happened. Observe what changes were made. And start that question with, I notice, or I noticed. Intrigue. Asking the question. Format it in such a way that invites someone else to share their understanding of why the change was made. And then silence. Don't say anything else. Present your question and stop. Sit in that silence because it doesn't position you as weaker. It doesn't position you as offended. It positions you as intrigued. And so here's an example. I noticed that during delivery, my X portion was omitted. I was wondering what you intended to present with that change because I intended this. Notice the silence. Notice the time and the cue for the listener to be invited in, to ask me what my position was, understand my position, and then format their own response based on what we noticed. And so our next section, we talked a lot about the way in which we can format questions. We talked about how we can structure them, how good questions require structure, effort, thoughtful effort, not easy effort, and direction, specific direction opposed to broad direction. But when you're listening to those responses, what do? Do you kind of zone out and just look for a way to be affirmed in the way in which you're doing your work or why your work was changed? Or do you listen actively? Because active listening has rules. And in some of these rules, we have to understand and not look for just the phrases that affirm our own feelings, but we go beyond paraphrasing, even when we're asking for clarification. So how do we do that? We follow these few rules that we have before us. 1, don't interrupt. Listen to the speaker. Listen to the person that is trying to give you their best, the person that is trying to present to you why your work was omitted. 2, pause before replying. I said it once before, right? In the I notice question framework that we present, and then we sit in silence by inviting that person in. But we pause before we reply because not only is that a skill of active listening, but that also says to the listener that I truly am listening to you and I honor your perspective. 3, repeat to confirm understanding. I understand that my piece was omitted. However, I would like to understand from you, fill in the blank. 4, ask follow-up questions. What would improvement look like? You'll find these rules as well as a couple of other spaces for worksheets for you to put into practice the skills that we're going through and developing today in your care package. It will be downloadable as soon as you get off of this workshop, but you have to stay to the end to be able to utilize that. And last, paying attention to your tone. And I asked this question to a few of the ambassadors that are on the call with us today. I said, I'm struggling. I'm struggling to understand how I might teach those that are listening to today's call. How might we pay attention to tone if someone is either neurodivergent or can't truly decipher how to assess tone? And so some of the questions and some of the pieces of analysis that they've given us were one, finding space in the chat to either say raise your hand if this is happening, raise your hand if you're an introvert, put a 1 in the chat if you find yourself stepping back when it comes to a difficult situation or a hard conversation. And so that is a way in which we can assess that. But then another way that we can assess tone is reading someone's body language, reading the way in which they present the question to you, and then having empathy. The empathy that we exude when we are listening to either a leader, listening to someone that works alongside of us, and addressing and understanding that we may have offended someone that we're talking to when that was never our intent. You take that space of empathy, utilizing that skill, and say, wait a minute, that is not my intent. Or asking, how did you take what I just said? What did you hear me say? And so how to go beyond paraphrasing, using those rules, but also giving us great space to pay close attention. Again, the author of this amazing book that I've referenced throughout this section and throughout today's presentation, written by Warren Berger, this quote is, as long as you're paying close attention to what the speaker is trying to express, your clarifying question just may be helpful. It may be helpful for those that are working alongside of you because it gives them the opportunity to say, hey, that's not the way that this was presented, or hey, that's not our intent. So let's dial that back a little bit, right? All right, so we've learned how to listen deeply, and now we want to have an opportunity to take a quick break and watch something fun.
Welcome to this video, and today we're in the heart of London talking about all things apprenticeships to schools. Thanks to the collaboration between Inspiring the Futures and the City of London.
Collaborations like this are super important because we're trying to get into every school and to make sure apprenticeships are more accessible to everyone, everywhere. Enjoy the video.
First of all, I want to thank Apprentis, I want to thank Cara for this amazing session. Even me, this session has been so insightful, very, very, very insightful. One of the things that Cara said, which really stood out to me, and I've even seen in my role, which I'll talk about in a sec, but she said about asking follow-up questions, and you'd be surprised to find out that our managers, they're actually expecting us to ask follow-up questions, because if we don't, they know that we're not expected to understand everything. So the expectation is that we're asking follow-up questions. It shows that we're interested. It shows that we're intrigued. So I'm very excited for the rest of this session. But anyways, my name is Reese. I'm a project manager at Amazon. I've been there for coming up to 7 months now. So it's been a little while, but it's gone very fast. And yeah, I just wanted to talk a little bit about how I've come to find Apprentice, how Apprentice has helped me, how I've been able to get involved with Apprentice. So Apprentice, they actually originally reached out to me to test one of their AI features. And when I first tested it, I was shocked. I was like, what? This thing is telling me, because at this point I was already a degree apprentice. So I was acting as though I hadn't yet got my apprenticeship. And I was like, if I had this thing when I was applying for my apprenticeships, this thing would have been a breeze. I wouldn't have had to stress about applying to 50 plus apprenticeships, because the apprenticeship readiness quiz, all of it, it's yeah, definitely make use of it. And for those that are already apprentices, I would still encourage you. It's something that I've done. Do the apprenticeship readiness quiz, because it will even tell you how you can improve within your apprenticeship. So the second I found out about that, I was like, no, I need to get on board with this, with these apprentice guys. And since then, I've had the opportunity to do a couple things with Bolu as well. Gone to King's College in London, spoke to the students, helped them use the AI features as well. And they said the exact same as me. Even their teachers were saying that the results they was getting were accurate, which is very interesting. And one of the reasons that, I guess a bit of backstory on how I came into my apprenticeship, etc. Like most people, I was in sixth form. I didn't really know what I wanted to do with my career. And then I stumbled across apprenticeships. Someone from Amazon, they came to do an assembly at my school. And that's when I found out about degree apprenticeships. And I was like, you can learn and earn at the same time. This is what I want to do. Because to be honest, maybe it was a bit prideful, I don't know. But the only real reason I wanted to do a degree was so that I could say I'm the first in my family to have a degree. But I didn't want the debt. Like, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do career-wise. I just wanted a degree. So when I found out that I could start my career and get a degree at the same time, I was like, yeah, this is what I need to do. So then I started applying. I was fortunate enough to have an amazing career advisor at my school, but I know with the amount of people that are reaching out to me on LinkedIn, it's not everyone that has that privilege. That's why, again, I'm such a big advocate for a platform like Apprentis, for supporting aspiring apprentices, because I know that not everyone had the support that I had going into their apprenticeship or trying to secure their apprenticeship. And yeah, that's basically me. A couple other things that I'm doing. Feel free, keep an eye on my LinkedIn. We've gone a bit quiet recently, but there's some things in the work, and yeah, we'll go from there. But like I said, I'm excited for the rest of this session, and I believe we'll welcome Cara back on.
All right. Thank you so much, Reese. One thing I want to share from Reese, and it makes me very excited, is to know that, excuse me, you were excited to be able to tell your family that you were the first. And how many of us, and you can add it in the chat, how many of us are the first? Who is the first in their family? Who is the first woman of color? Who is the first male of color? Who is the first male? Who is the first? Who is a first in the chat? And we all appear to be first at something, right? There's always going to be a time for us to be a first. And with that also helps us to understand, and a couple of questions that we'll be adding to the chat. One that I did not preface before, but when you're talking to your managers, and back to Reese's point, our managers do expect for us to have questions, to have clarifying questions. They understand that we don't know everything, and there may be some managers that don't know that you don't know everything, right? There may not be a culture of feedback or a culture of giving back, right? And receiving information, right? I'm seeing it in the chat that they're first, right on. But for those of us that do have those managers that either may not be the most welcoming, we want you to turn to the chat and respond to this question very quickly of how do you feel? How does your manager make you feel when you present a question? Do you feel, confident enough to answer those questions? Do you feel equipped enough to say to them, hey, I need help with this? It leads us to how we ask better questions in meetings. For those of us that may have managers that are not supportive of the questions that we ask, or even those that do have managers that are supportive of the questions that we ask, when we're in meetings, how do we show up and ask better questions? One, we seek to connect, we seek to inquire, and in some way we find spaces to seek leadership. We also can find spaces to be intrigued, to be invited into that space of intrigue, opposed to offense. And then we actively listen. Remember, we exude that silence after we present that question, either from the position of us noticing something or from the position of, I want to learn more. I want to learn more based on what you're saying. I want to repeat back to you because I need to clarify something. And so when the rubber meets the road, as you can creatively see on this slide, oh, do I love a good slide creation. As you see on the slide, you see the rubber meeting the road. And in our case, the rubber meets the road when we're in a meeting. I saw that as one of the questions that was in the chat is, how do you put these things into practice? How do I focus when I'm in a meeting? Because there are so many things that I have to do. There's so many things that I have to understand when I'm in this meeting. So how do I stay focused? How do I stay engaged? Because I'm a first year, right? I'm the new kid on the block. And I want to make sure that they know that I'm interested. And last, how do I learn? How do I learn when I'm a part of this meeting? And how do I keep myself focused on the objective of learning? Well, let's break this down to 3 parts. And each of these sections that are listed, focus, engage, learn, are reserved for each part of the meeting. So let's start out with before the meeting. Before you're going into the meeting, let's focus on your non-negotiable objectives. Go in with 2 of them. And I only say 2 so that you can keep yourself open to the opportunity to gain something new. So when you're in a meeting and you are being an active listener, you come into a meeting with a non-negotiable, which means if you're a part of a meeting that may be a 30-minute stand-up, and we know that the culture of these meetings, they're quick. They're delegation oriented, they're status update oriented. Think of a non-negotiable being like this. Either I'm taking away from this meeting something that is going to help someone else achieve their goals. I'm taking from this meeting something that'll make me laugh. Because let's be real. When we go into any meeting, right? When we go into any space that we know that we're supposed to be listening, we know that we're supposed to be taking in a lot of information similar to what we're doing now, we're more likely to remember what made us laugh than we are any other way, right? So let's wrap that information that we have around some laughter. And then I can guarantee you'll retain that information a bit easier. So the next point of focus as we are in a meeting, so during a meeting, we want to engage, we want to find out why this matters to me. some of the objectives that we can come into, and we're going to use this this example throughout the next two. Is we're still in the culture in the setup of a 30-minute stand-up meeting. Again, it is quick, it is delegation oriented, it is status update oriented. There are a lot of things happening, right? There's a lot of information that is being spewed one space to another. And so one of the objectives that we want to have and assess why something matters to us: is this helping me achieve my immediate goal? So I have a goal now to help my team. I lead a team of 7, and my coordinators sit nationally. They live in different cities, different states, different time zones, right? I'm in a different time zone than most of the folks that are on this call, right? And the best way that I can address every meeting that I go into moving forward, like the all staff meeting that is 90 minutes long, how can this information be used to help me achieve an immediate goal? My immediate goal is for my team to have the most amount of clarity based on their goals. My immediate goal during an interview, if I'm a part of an interview, my immediate goal during an interview is to understand how I can transfer my skills to what someone needs in this role, right? That transfer, that space in between the transfer between what my skills are and what they need, that is the way in which you engage the deepest, okay? You're presenting what they ask for. You're presenting what they require from someone in a role back to, you're utilizing movement language, you're utilizing bridge language, you're utilizing asset-based phrases, like those phrases that we talked about before, instead of the, well, why this? Well, why that? That is a defense, right? But by utilizing asset-based questions or phrases, you can say things like, well, fill in the blank, or when I was a part of this team, I was able to utilize this skill. This skill aligns to your need here, and I can see where we can now move this forward together, right? And then the last example of how you can make something matter for you during a meeting is challenging your current approach to a roadblock. A current roadblock that somebody can face within a 30-minute meeting is it's quick, right? It's a quick space. It's a space in which you feel as if you're not comfortable to ask those questions. However, because your manager is positioned and created a culture of asking questions forward and asking questions first, leading from a space of answering your questions so that it can lead to the next point in which they will cover during the meeting doesn't move without you, right? And so what are you taking from this meeting to help you challenge your current roadblock? Even in an interview, right? How are you using the information that is being presented to you to challenge a certain roadblock that you may be adjusting to even while you're sitting in a meeting? Is you're not qualified. You don't have X amount of years. You only have 4 of the 7 that they asked for. Well, congratulations. This is your opportunity to ask a question that will direct them to bringing up the need for a skill that you align with, right? And so the last thing, as we've talked about from the interview standpoint, after the meeting, the transfer of takeaways. So again, from this space of a 30-minute quick delegation heavy meeting, a transferable takeaway can be listed this way: this meeting helped me understand X. Or from Prina's standpoint, when she was creating a tracker on the opportunities that she was not invited to be a part of, this interview opportunity helped me to understand that I am better suited as a questioner first. This meeting taught me that I am better suited to be the person that answers this certain issue. Due to the question that was presented to me during this meeting, I understand from my current role, I can present this issue or I can present the solution this way because I was reminded of it from this interview, right? Or the position of this content wasn't meant for me, but I noticed that they're looking for someone to sit in this role, but that more so aligns to this job title. Dear interviewer, can you let me know why there is a shift in the job titles? Because the skill set that is aligned here that you're asking for is more aligned based on the market to this job title. Can you tell me why you were thinking this job title aligned more? I may have given you a question that has never been asked in an interview before. Will it present you as a strong candidate? Come back and let me know. And so some of the quick takeaways that we want to anchor to here as we talk about the focus, the engagement, and the learning while you're walking through a meeting and how you present and ask better questions during that meeting. You want to focus your objectives and ask yourself, if I had to retell the details of this meeting, which details would I most likely remember? During the meeting and you're engaging on your current matters based on what matters most to you, how might the context of this meeting help me create a solution? Again, bridging back those skills to what they need in an interview. And last, when we think about the applicable takeaways and what we learned from this meeting, what this context has shown me is I'll be able to perform X skill better. And what else? I'm going to stop sharing my screen and I'm going to ask if we have one more speaker to take the floor.
Okay, so I just want to start by thanking everyone for this opportunity. And I'm going to start off straight away with the reason why I'm here. I definitely think, like what he said in the beginning, about being an apprentice, things can get lonely, you feel like you don't really have that support. And that's genuinely why I'm all here and in full support of the mission of Apprentice. Partially because I'm the founder of the Her Estate Network, which is a network to support young females to get into construction, real estate, because it was quite male dominated and it always has been. So, for example, when I joined, I was a site manager from September last year. And I was the only female on site, and I was also the only black person on site, and I was also the only apprentice that my company hired. So even with that alone, you can probably get an idea of how things could feel quite lonely, quite overwhelming as well. But in terms of talking and building rapport with people in my team, I think my disadvantage was the fact that social media was my leverage. So based on what Cara is saying, learning how to ask questions is very much different in person than it is on social media, which is another reason why I think that this webinar is such a great initiative, because it pushes you to think about how to communicate from a humanistic point of view rather than just social media. And then I'm also just going to talk a little bit more about like my experience as an apprentice and why Apprentice will genuinely benefit many more young people. So I started networking around the age of 15. And most times I was just hiding in the toilets because I didn't really know what to say, didn't really have any questions. But literally just referring back to everything that Cara has said, being able to walk into a room and knowing that you belong here, not denying yourself before a room does, just knowing that every space you walk into, you're there for a reason. and speaking up, asking questions, especially with follow-up questions. That's one thing as well. Just hearing everything that's been said, it helped me to realize I'm not antisocial. I just don't know how to ask questions. And I definitely feel like once people get that memo out their head, oh, I'm antisocial, I don't want to speak to people, but you begin to realize, okay, how can I make people feel like I'm engaging? How can I learn? How can I stay focused in this conversation? I think it will definitely be very beneficial. So that's my take on this.
Hey, girl, hey.
Hello.
So based on the way in which you made the transition from being an apprentice to running running your network, tell me what were some of the most important questions that you asked yourself?
I had to ask myself, is it best for me to walk away? Because I feel like nowadays, I know that someone mentioned about the hype and the glamorization of, or like the sexiness of an apprenticeship. It's something that everybody wanted. So it was quite a tough decision to say, I'm walking away from what somebody else could see as a dream. So I definitely do feel like
Mhm.
that was the main question I was asking myself, that if I do this, will I have a regret? Will I sit there and wish I never done this? But definitely asking questions about how can this benefit my future, and how can this also allow me to elevate myself in this process? Because one thing I always say is that it's not about the end result, it's what you do whilst you're waiting. So even whilst I'm going to drop out of this, what can I do? Whether that's creating impact, whether it's working on myself. Those are the kind of questions I was asking.
That's good. That's good. And Prina, I want to go to you. So because you were in the space of like, facing rejection, right? Because it was only a season, you realized that you had to pivot the way in which you approached like your season of like going through like, okay, this wasn't for me, I have to reframe. This wasn't for me, I have to reframe. So tell me about a couple of the questions that you were asking yourself in that moment, even if they were like bad questions, right?
Yeah.
Of like, am I really worth this?
100%. It's so easy to get caught up in those negative thoughts of, is this actually for me? Why are other people getting those
Mhm.
offers? Why am I not? Maybe this isn't cut out for me. Maybe I should just go to university. But it's when I caught myself saying, no, if they can do it, so can I. That's the first thing that's like, why am I putting myself down? I know I can do it. And I think it's just constantly questioning yourself in that sense of, okay, what can I do better? So I think it was more of, I know I couldn't speak as well, I wasn't really clear in my speaking, so my interviews didn't go that well. Then I was like, how can I improve that? Do I need to research more? I think it's just constantly coming back to yourself. Don't push yourself down. That's one thing that I was like always telling myself, like, don't do that. You need to keep pushing yourself. If anything, you are there for yourself first. So that was definitely what, would always help me like stay on track.
That's good. That's good. And so, Reese, I know that we tend to hear a lot of from women and how they feel that they doubt their abilities, right? And then coming from the standpoint of someone being a first in their family to complete this amazing accomplishment, were there areas in which you not only doubted your confidence but also questioned who you're doing this for?
I'm not sure I would say there was times where I would doubt my ability per se, but there was definitely times when I initially found out how competitive degree apprenticeships were. There were definitely times where I thought I was potentially a bit disadvantaged, purely
Yeah.
because of the fact that I come from a background where, not that they haven't done well for themselves, they've done well for themselves, but no one in my family's been to university before. No one's kind of followed that traditional routes. Even when it came to doing UCAS, applying to universities, they didn't know what to do. They didn't know how to support me, which
Yeah.
again, I'm grateful that I had such an amazing academic mentor, career mentor, who was able to help me through that process. But in terms of, was I doing it for, you said, was there a point
Yeah,
in
like
time where I was doing it
questioning
for the
who
role?
you were doing it for.
Yeah, I think I mentioned it earlier. I think there was maybe a period of time where, not so much pride, but I was like, I wanted to follow the traditional route and do a university degree because I applied to uni as well. I wanted to do a degree purely so I could say, oh yeah, like I'm the first in my family to get a degree, when really I didn't know what I wanted to do it in. So I was just gonna apply to some random like sport or business or something just to get a degree. And then I found out about degree apprenticeships and I was like, no, this is something that I actually want to do. I can get a degree, which is obviously useful, but at the same time, I can start my career early on. So I have the opportunity to do something that my parents didn't get to do, their parents didn't get to do. And even, you know, the role that I'm working now, working in the city, even that's something that they've not had the opportunity to do. So
That's so good. So if we were to give questioning advice to anyone that is going through an interview right now, what would be your advice to them?
I would say definitely ask questions. Even if there were times where I was coming out of interviews and I didn't necessarily have a question to ask, it all quite made sense. But I would still make sure to ask a question just to show, okay, I'm intrigued. I'm not just taking whatever's been said at face value. So even if it's, and again, maybe not immediately after an interview, but say, for example, you get a rejection or whatever it is, reach out to your recruiter and say, thank you so much for the opportunity. Can I ask, what could I have done better? That's still you asking a question. And that goes a long way. I even know someone who they reached out to their recruiter. They said, thank you for the opportunity. May have even asked a question. And then later on down the line, the recruiter reached back out and gave them a different role. So I'd say ask questions, even if it's not for your own information, just to show that you're engaged, show that you're intrigued, show that you're, I guess, yeah, intrigued, inquisitive, that you actually care about what you're doing.
Nice. That's so good. That's so good. Prina or Elizabeth, any interview advice to give to someone?
Yeah. I think what really helped me, I don't know if it's being a bit cheeky, but I think what I'd do and I'll ask the interviewers is really make them think back of when they were in our position. So then they know what it's like to be in that kind of role. So then they have to actually think like, let me not be too hard. Obviously they have a guideline to follow, but you really got to get them questioning like, yeah, I've been in the same kind of position. Let me give truthful and honest advice. And let's say you don't get that role, you could use that advice for your next interview or just help you move forward. I think it's really important because they're the same as you. They just got a few years more of experience.
That's so true. That's so true.
One thing I would say is just always have it in your mind that not everyone actually knows what they're doing. Like most of the time, employers, it's their first time of actually ever being a CEO. No one's been a CEO 4 times in their life unless they've earned it in 4 different roles. So everyone's still figuring life out. So don't ever feel like, oh, I don't know what I'm doing, I'm behind. Because if you were to ask the person next to you that looks overly confident in the suit and tie or the fancy dress and heels, they're probably going to look at you and say, oh, I don't know either. So just having that understanding and having that grace on yourself is great.
Did you ever experience any type of imposter syndrome being a part of that first crew? You know, first in your family to go through, first in your family to even go through the college experience. Did you experience any imposter syndrome?
Hello.
Yeah, he can.
He is. I think you guys were first, right? First in your family.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so you guys can answer this question then.
Nice. Can you hear me loud and clear?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Nice. Wow. Imposter syndrome. I think that's in my first yeah, that was a reoccurring thing because like there was always this expectation for me, but like the journey to getting there, it was just that there was times where I was like, how did I get here? How am I in this position? You know, what have I done to be here? But that imposter syndrome for me has always been like a positive indication for me. Imposter syndrome just means that you now put yourself in a new environment where you're being tested, where you're not used to the day-to-day situations that and challenges that you're facing. So yeah, for me, like imposter syndrome has always been like a positive indication. But at the start, it wasn't. At the start, it was like, wow, what am I doing here?
Yeah, I get that. I get that. So for you, E, if you're sitting in the position of being a first, right? And you don't have people to like help you regulate or to say like, bro, you're doing too much. Like stop asking the same thing over and over, right? But in order to combat that, we find a way to one, be confident in the way in which we are approaching and we're utilizing the skills that we've earned and learned up to this point. But for someone that doesn't have that, for someone that doesn't have that confidence, and they're just trying to show up as their best self, but they're met with this response of, bro, you're doing too much. Chill. Like, what do you say to an apprentice that's going through something like that?
I feel like the first thing to do is analyze your situation. And when I say that, I mean identifying your strengths and your weaknesses. Like, and by doing so, you're able to like bridge that gap, and that builds on with you having confidence and building that level of clarity that you have for yourself. And if you have that within, everything else is just noise, and it will be so much easier to like block the noise if you have clarity from within.
Yeah.
So I'm the kind of person to definitely ask questions over and over again, only because I'm doing it for my own good. I'm doing it for my own future. It is my career that's on the line, not yours. So if I'm asking the same questions, it's definitely something where I'm willing to learn more. And how managers or people in the meeting rooms could actually see that, they could see that as an advantage. This person's actually eager. They're keen to actually understand. And what they can now do is, after the meeting is commenced, they could schedule like a 5-minute or catch up with you to really like get into, breaking down the question and providing tailored answers to your question. And the fact that it's going to be one-on-one, you're going to get the best level of support from that individual.
So good. So good. I think we tend to skew away from the power that we hold in saying, hey, can I meet offline? Just squash all the noise right there with that multi-layered, intense, thoughtful question of, hey, can we meet offline? I have a
Yeah.
follow-up for you. And they have the opportunity then, because you're intrigued, because you're inviting them in, they have the opportunity then to say, yeah, just ping me or just email me, or let's get on a call at such and such time, because they value what you're bringing, and then they position themselves in that moment as a mentor.
Yeah, exactly. Like, especially when you're in like big organizations. Like I was in NatWest, right? And I was in meeting rooms with directors, right? And I was definitely the youngest in that room. But it's a thing of, they would say key terms and key phrases that I wouldn't just grasp, but like, I wouldn't understand. But as the youngest person in the room, it's an advantage, make use of it. Hey, could you explain or break down that key term? What does that mean in banking and finance? How can I implement it in my own apprenticeship journey? Or what is the processes behind it? How does it function? So it's like, asking those questions doesn't make you sound stupid or look silly. Trust me. Like, some people who are more seasoned professionals in that room might not even understand what's being discussed, and they might even have that. They might have fear to even raise up their hands or signify or notify that they are stuck or they need help breaking down those questions.
Yeah.
So it's like you're taking that leap of faith. You're showing them that you have the confidence to survive in rooms like this where people naturally just break. And I'm talking about people who have spent years in the professional environment that you're now within. So it's about, if you're able to like understand that earlier on during your professional journey, then you're set for success. Definitely, it's just a matter of time.
That's so true, because I can even think back to rooms where I have presented questions like at conferences and whatnot, and I knew that I only had like 2 minutes on the mic, and I started with something funny. Like, for based on your example where you said that you were the youngest in the room, like in that situation, I'd be like, hey, the baby in the room is talking real quick. I got a question for you. You know what I mean? And then
Yeah.
people will remember me after that, one, because I made fun of myself. And then two, because there'll be more people that want to help the baby in the room, right? Because you're playing on somebody else's ego.
Yeah, yeah. 100%. And to also take it back to what you were saying about the mentors earlier and pulling the people to the side, I
Yeah.
think that is one of the best things you can do in your career, especially right at the start, because they want to help. They want to answer these questions. You know, they are going to feel happy to help you.
Mhm.
So if that opportunity is there, why would you not take it? All you have to do is ask a question. So
No,
honestly,
facts.
it's the key to knowledge and access to information that you never knew existed. If you understand how to ask better questions, you will learn so much at such a quicker rate. And I know that whole feeling of feeling scared to ask a question is something that is very real, but you have to overcome it, because I think this is what E was saying. You have to be selfish. You have to have that selfishness to ask those questions, and it doesn't matter what other people think or what other people's opinions are, because you've asked those questions. You know, at the end of the day, it's going to help you in your career. So you have to think about that as well, to overcome that fear. Ask those questions, build those relationships with mentors, and just ask. They should be annoyed about the amount of questions that you ask.
No, that's so true. That's so true. And it also leads me to that point that I was going to get into with mentorship about when we're putting ourselves in the situation that we are being mentored by other people, we also have to understand that we have to guide them to the answer that we're seeking, right? Because just as you said, Bolu, like how great is it for us to be in in the space to have access to that information? Because somebody can learn a lot farther and can go a lot farther in their career if they learn one on one. Somebody can gain a lot more within their career if they learn one on one based on or versus learning in like a larger group. And so, how do we guide others to the answers that we want to see? We first mimic what we want to see based in our questions, right? So similar to that example that I used with E, when you said that you were the youngest in the room, and some of them didn't want to ask certain questions or whatnot because some of them they have like their pride or their ego that is being a part of the conversation, right? And they're like, I don't want to ask that because I'm supposed to know. But if you're mimicking what you want to see based on the way that you're structuring your question, you can get the response that you want. You can get that specific response that you want. And you can structure it in a way that is similar to what we're seeing in our care packages that will be downloadable and available to you as soon as you fill out the survey. Um, for those of us that are on the line live and for those of us that are on the line and watching this replay. But one of the questions that we see is, what is one habit I should build now that will help me in the long run? In a way in which we can break this out, we have to reframe it, right? We have to format our response within the question. And the way that we can break this down is one, let's look back at one of the tips that were given at the top of the call, that we have to have either open-ended questions or closed-ended questions. So within that one habit, that question where that part of the question that says one habit, you're telling them that you're wanting to know from an open-ended perspective. And from that open-ended perspective, you're asking that person to give you an answer to one habit. Highlight one habit, right? Once they highlight that one habit, then you're putting in that effort, that thoughtful effort of what you should build. What should I be building now? Based on that one habit, what should I be building now? And then if we add one more part to this question, make it a little longer, and say, what are 3 ways you have recently used that earned skill? So instead of we can use that word habit and skill interchangeably here. But if we were to reframe this entire question and say, what is one skill I should build on now that will help me in the long run? And what are 3 ways you've recently used that skill? So I want to direct this to you, E. You're learning the skill of management, platform management, right? You're building a platform now. So based on that one skill that you're earning right now, what are 3 ways that you've recently used it in other areas?
So I would say one skill that I've actually earned along the line is being able to, my writing skills, I would say that. My writing skills has improved. And as an entrepreneur and founder of Apprentice, you're sort of like leading the direction of the platform, of the digital platform. And in a way, that leads on to like writing case studies, that leads on to writing impact reports. And this is the first time I've ever come across such, actually like writing it. When I was in NatWest or large organizations, seeing them writing it at a very high quality level, I never saw myself doing something like that or being in that position to actually do something like that. So like I've been able to like use that my writing skills enhanced, especially with tools, modern tools right now like AI, that helps you develop more and master the skill sets more as well. So it's like the more you do it, the more you practice doing it in a practical environment, the more you become a master at that skill. And it's just something that you just have to like repeat on a constant basis. What's going on with everyone?
Sorry.
But yeah, it's just something that you always have to like repeat on a constant basis to become a master at it. So 3 ways I've used that recently, at the business here at Apprentice, writing impact reports, writing case studies for different stakeholders, employers and schools as well. So yeah, I feel like that's one of the best skills that I've been able to like improve on over time. It's something that I actually lacked growing up. Writing, I had a language barrier as well. I couldn't speak fluently as I could right now. Obviously you can hear I'm from Nigeria, so you can hear a bit of the Nigerian accent, but I weigh that with pride, so it's part of clarity in yourself as well that I was talking about earlier on. So if you have that level of confidence in yourself and you're willing to like learn more, you have that eagerness to learn more, there's nothing anyone can say that would make you break, bend or fold. Like literally, like you stand 10 toes on what you stand for and what you believe in.
Real talk. That's awesome. And so this leads me to the last point that I want to make is when we put ourselves in a position of ingesting and inviting in and actually utilizing feedback, some of the questions that we can ask while we're in a space of feedback, either with our managers, with a mentor that we're learning from. And side note, someone does not have to be older than you in order for them to be your mentor. I am older than the 2 people that are on the screen with you. However, I learn from them every day, right? Because we are in the position of being able to create this space together. I'm now learning from the both of them. I learned diligence from E, and I learned the power of presentation from Bolu, right? Sometimes it'll be interchangeable, but my question plus action will lead to my change. But my question of what skills are you learning now and how are you utilizing those skills? How are you practicing those skills? My question minus action is just philosophy, right? He can tell me all day long that he is learning to be a better content creator. He is learning to utilize his writing skills and sharpen his writing skills and using them as the one that is creating impact reports, the one that is an entrepreneur that has to soon pitch other corporations, other universities to be in partnership with him financially to make sure that Apprentice goes beyond every level that we have even thought of it to be, because we have to find a way to utilize the space of feedback positively, right? It can't just be philosophy. And though I will not stress it more than I'm stressing it now, philosophy is not bad, right? You can learn something, you can gain information, you can gain feedback from someone and not utilize it, and that's okay. It is not for you to use that in that season, right? And so that's where it's classified as philosophy. Dog. That's where it's classified as philosophy. But if you were to utilize that action, then that evokes that change. And so it leads us back to the way in which we utilize the feedback that we receive. And it takes us back to the first point that we had, right? Before you came into this space with me and with those that are on the call, you may have come with a few questions in mind of like, how can this person help me? Right? But when you're addressing the feedback that you're receiving for your work, for your interviews, for those of us that are going into interviews pretty soon, for those of us that are going into mentorship conversations, how might I see this with fresh eyes? How might I not be receiving their feedback and assuming something first? How might I be taking their feedback as judgment? And what am I missing here? Am I missing that they truly care about the way in which I improve in my career? Am I missing the fact that I didn't ask the right question? Am I missing the fact that I didn't phrase the question correctly or clearly? And why does this matter to me now? It matters to me now because the feedback that we apply and we take action on evokes change. And so I say all this to say, and in closing, the questions that we ask can help create the bridge between where we are now and where we are to be. But it takes you to take action. It takes you to take action on the way you structure your questions, the effort you put into your questions, and the direction of the responses that you receive. Because it's up to you to use those questions and the responses to those questions through your active listening to connect, to inquire, and to lead. But it's up to you. And with that, I'm going to close and I'm going to ask you all to please, please, please continue to stay connected with us. And let's open it up and let's find space to answer a couple more questions. And I am Cara Gooch. I serve and sit in multiple roles. I am a wife, I am a mom, I am an apprentice grad, strategist, a coach, and a trainer, as you've seen today. One of my favorite skills that I get to utilize every day. But I had the great pleasure and opportunity to be welcomed into the Apprentice family as a partner. And this is just the beginning, fam. This is just the beginning. So
So yeah, amazing. I mean, 2 hours done just like that. We're not done actually. We've still got a care package to deliver to you guys. So just before we actually get onto the care package, we've got a couple questions that I feel like we need to answer. This session is mainly for current apprentices, but I'm glad to see aspiring apprentices in this space as well. So you guys are breaking the rules right here. So we don't mind. But one question here I can see from Enoch Ajayi, who is a solicitor. He's actually a current apprentice. So he's a solicitor apprentice at DWF, and he's aspiring to be a commercial lawyer. I'm currently studying at BPP Law School. I also studied at BPP as well. So you're in good hands, bro. It says here, as an apprentice, what is the best way to track your wins without coming across as bragging or trying to do the most? I mean, for me, if I don't brag about my wins, who's gonna do it? You have to market yourself out there if you already don't have the platform to market it. But if you're in a workplace and you're achieving great things, I wouldn't see that as bragging. I would see it as you creating visibility. You're probably showing progress as well, because it's going to be tracked. The more you talk about it, the more someone clocks what you're saying. And you don't know what rooms that they might be in where what you've achieved might resonate with somebody who's looking for that person who's achieved what you've achieved. Does that make sense? So it's showing progress, it's giving context into your development as well. So instead of saying, I guess the way you can like reframe that is instead of saying you're not bragging, you could say you're creating visibility. Sorry, you could say instead of saying I did this, sorry, instead of saying I did this, you could actually say things like, what was the task? Instead of I did this, track what was the task, what did you actually do, what changed as a result, and what did you actually learn? So it's like you're looking at the situation, which is what you're working on, and the action is what did you contribute specifically, and then I guess the outcome would be what was the results, or who did it impact, or what was the impact in what you actually did. And then it's like, what did you learn from that? Learning aspect is very, very key. The eagerness to learn is like, what did you understand, or how can you improve? Instead of, saying like, I did this and it helped me, it helped improve a process. You could say like, I was able to like review your onboarding process, and something that I've never done before. I identified 2 delays within that process, and I was able to suggest a change that reduced probably bounce back rate or response time, and then you put a metric by 20% or 40%. What did you learn? I learned how small operational changes impact team productivity or efficiency. Things like that. And then how you share, then you can share it without sounding like you're doing the most. To be honest, even the way I framed it is very respectful. If it was me, I would just naturally be myself, I'll be so honest with you. And I'll say it for exactly how it is, and the thing is, always end on wanting to learn more. Always end on wanting to learn more. In meetings, you can frame it as a contribution. With managers, it could be framed as a development, and possibly on like digital platforms like LinkedIn or TikTok, whatever platform you utilize, it could be framed as a reflection. So say what you did, reflect on it, what you learned, who it impacted, that sort of thing. So yeah, I wouldn't say that, I wouldn't use showing off as the right term, but just try, if you're looking for a way to like overcome that, share without sounding like you're doing the most in that aspect. But yeah, Bully, I don't know if you want to add to that, or
Yeah, no, I'll just quickly add to that. I fully agree with literally everything you said there. It can feel very like icky to kind of self-promote, right? But reframe it. You're not self-promoting, you're sharing your experiences so people who are looking to be where you want to be can be prepared for the step that they're about to take. All of us here, we use LinkedIn, we share our stories. We don't do that because we're trying to be famous, because we're trying to be the top dog. No, we do it because we know that the experiences we have can be very, very helpful to the people who want to come into these opportunities that we are very, very lucky to have. So it's just about sharing your story, because you never know who that might help.
Also, in a world that is data driven, your lived experience is just as valid a piece of data as any statistic is, because statistics wouldn't matter if it's not a collection of qualitative data. Quantitative can get you in the room, but qualitative keeps you in the room.
100%, 100%. I agree. So yeah, that's about it. Now it's time for guys to get the care package. I'm going to put it in the chat. You would have to like fill in a survey, basically to help us like improve on our services, on our solutions as well, and basically the interaction that you've had with Apprentice this evening. I just want to say a massive thank you to everyone who's been involved. Prena, Reese, Elizabeth, Cara, Bolu. I just want to say like I really appreciate you guys for your insights, for your knowledge, for making the time, dedicating the time to actually inspire people who are aspiring to become leaders. And there's this framework that is in the apprenticeships in the apprenticeship space. Apprenticeship right now is known just for earning and learning, and the reason why we are doing this pilot with external partners in the United States is because we're trying to prove a new framework that we are building here at Apprentice. and everyone who's been involved in the build up of this webinar has been involved in proving that framework, and that framework is learn, earn and own, which is the Leo framework. And in the forthcoming weeks we'll be talking more of that framework, of what we analyzed in that space, because it's very impactful. Not only can you earn and learn, like young people should be able to like take ownership of the professional identity of their future, not just within the professional environment but externally, because sometimes being young in a space like that, you can only grow to a certain extent within that institution. But if you don't know how to come out of your shell because you've built trust with that institution, it could be quite daunting sometimes, and you don't want to repeat that cycle again that you started off with, transitioning from the higher education into the working environment. Then if you repeat that cycle, it now becomes a vicious cycle, and we don't want you guys to go through that. And that's the gap that's currently hindering not only students but also current apprentices as well, who are aspiring to become leaders, who want to become future leaders and take ownership of their future as well. So the earlier the better, and this is why Apprentice is here. This is why we are proving frameworks like this, and we are doing what no one in the apprenticeship space has ever done before. So once again, guys, a round of applause to you guys. Thank you so much. I appreciate you guys. So yeah, and also to those who tuned in, we appreciate you so much. Thanks for believing in us. Thanks for trusting us as a solutions provider. We hope we were able to deliver, and Cara is very good at what she does. She was an Apprentice alumni at Accenture, so she and everyone else who has joined this webinar is turning their lived experience into innovation. And I keep saying that a system that's fit for some isn't fit for all. So the work that we're doing is very mission driven. Apprentice is on a mission to making apprenticeships accessible to everyone everywhere, and we're now transitioning from aspiring apprentices to now creating an inclusive ecosystem for current apprentices.